welcome and thanks for everyone for being here today. I think with that we can go ahead and kick this off. We're going to chat through connected TV today, kind of looking at a Q4 action plan and how CTV can kind of factor into that, with a really heavy emphasis in driving that peak performance, specifically with DV360 and YouTube. I am joined today by Kamau and Tony, which we'll get into intros shortly. But they are both at Google, and we're very excited to be getting together to chat today. Sweet. So diving into intros, my name is Mary Kotara. I'm the manager of media consulting here at Adswerve. I love DV360. I've been in the programmatic space for over 10 years. But really the stars of the show today are Kamau Brown and Tony. And with that, I will let them introduce themselves.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mary. And thank you, everyone who joined. My name is Kamau Brown. Quick 20 seconds of myself, originally from Washington, D.C., played football at West Virginia University. From a working perspective, I had several opportunities to work in mergers and acquisitions, some in private equity, and then most recently, of course, here at Google. Here at Google now, I've been here for a little over three and a half years or so. And my first role at Google for the first 2.5 years was head of sales for agencies. And most recently, I'm head of sales for DV360 for the US region. And looking forward to walking you through a lot of the Q4 opportunities and beyond that, and also the value of YouTube and also the value of DV360 and how we can scale your business. And I'll hand that off to Tony.
Hey guys, thank you so much, Mary, for kind of giving us this platform and inviting us to speak to the audience today. Really honored with the opportunity. So given Kamau gave his background in that way, I'll give mine. I'm from the UK originally. I've worked globally. I've been in the US for about 15 years. The beginning of my career, first 20 years of my career, I was in the agency world, including the very earliest days of programmatic. Typically, on Google's platforms, DBM, etc. I spent about 5 years in the TV business of NBC Universal, so know that side of the business and was involved in that programmatic business too. At Google, I'm the managing director of display, video, and creative, which includes DV360. And so that basically is about the go-to-market planning, working on the product roadmap, and essentially kind of like supporting our go-to-market teams around the world. So really honored and privileged to have the opportunity to talk to you guys today.
Thank you both. And yeah, if you can't tell, we have two very knowledgeable and experienced Googlers ready to kind of tell you all about DV360 in the connected TV space, and then also answer any of those questions near the end. But first, before we kind of dive into that, I want to give a little bit of a brief background on Adswerve for those of you that may not be as familiar. We are go-to experts for data, media, and tech. So we're talking media today, but we also are experts in data and tech. We're proud to be the #1 Google marketing partner and a top Google Cloud partner as well, and Adobe's emerging solution partner of the year for 2 years in a row. We've got over 250 experts in all the different tools across Google, Adobe, as well as other marketing tools and platforms, since they all kind of connect together. And we know that at the end of the day, that's how kind of all of your strategies piece together. It's not just one silo. And we actually log over about 80,000 hours a year on client analytics projects alone and manage about $1 billion in media spend. So odds are, if you've come across a marketing challenge, we've seen it too, and we've already helped a client with it, and we're ready to help you as well. So looking at the agenda for the day, first we're going to start off with setting the stage and looking at the current CTV landscape, what's here, what's coming, kind of why it matters. Then we'll put a spotlight on YouTube and YouTube TV specifically and how those tools can really help you boost your marketing. And then we'll move into kind of an action plan for that Q4 strategy that I mentioned earlier. And then finally, we'll leave some time for Q&A and wrap up with any kind of thoughts and insights. So starting off, as mentioned, we'll first be diving into the CTV landscape, discussing kind of the reach that exists within CTV and especially in Google's DV360 platform. The first step to planning for Q4, at least I've witnessed firsthand, is determining kind of what channels you might even want to include and dive into, and then ultimately kind of what reach you're going to be getting from each of those to make sure you're capitalizing on everything. So let's get into it. Starting with a myth that frequently comes up in conversations with clients is DV360 is not a leading platform for CTV buying. We're here to bust that thought and prove that DV360 has unmatched reach and control for CTV. So Tony, let's start with you. Do you have any thoughts on why this myth is in fact a myth?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, and perhaps there was a time where this was right. A very long time ago. I think about my own family and I look at my viewing behaviors, which is very much with the cord, very plugged in. I look at my oldest child who's 18, and then I look at the other ones, and she was the generation where she was kind of like between both worlds, a CTV world and a linear world. But I look at my youngest who's 11. We cut the cord a very long time ago, and so he doesn't even know any of those brands except for as icons on a screen. So what I would say here is that CTV is now everywhere. We've seen a generational shift, and we've seen a behavior shift. The eyeballs have moved, to CTV, and we see that in the numbers here. And the numbers keep climbing every year. So 88% of US TV households have at least one CTV device or platform, at least one. If you're like me, I've got Disney, I've got a bunch of stuff, I've got Netflix, I've got YouTube TV as well. So there's an array of these now that people are using for everyday consumption. If you're like me and you were called Kotara, and you wanted to reach those people and you can't reach them via linear anymore, this is clearly where you go. 40% of cord cutters are exclusively reachable via CTV. And 73% is a fascinating stat. 73% of Americans have canceled their cable TV subscription, said it was due to price. Price has been a real constraint for people, particularly in this economic environment. So right now where we are is at 56 million US internet households are cord cutters. That's 46% of the population, and 12% have never even subscribed to traditional pay TV. So think about that. That Gen Z cohort coming up, they didn't even have the cable in the first place to be a cord cutter. So the main point I want everyone to take away from this slide is that CTV is everywhere now. There's hardly anyone you want to reach that you can't reach, and I'll kind of go into that shortly. And if you don't mind to build on this as well, it's like the way to think about this is like this is essentially the view you will have of the CTV landscape. So you can see YouTube, Netflix, Hulu, Peacock, Prime, etc. And the big question is, if this is the kind of the landscape, how much of that landscape can you get with DV360 versus some of our main competitors? So if you don't mind hitting the build on the slide, I don't think that, yes, exactly. So 5.1 billion watch hours is available via DV360. So you get almost all of this universe. So everything apart from obviously Twitch and Prime Video, which are Amazon products. So that's it. You get almost all of the marketplace, which is 98%. Of the market of inventory available via CTV. And if you see there, Amazon is just 2.6 billion of those hours. And then lastly, the Trade Desk is 3 billion watch hours. The difference between us and the Trade Desk is almost the same as all of Amazon, just to give you a sense of the scale of DV360. So if there ever was a question about whether you could reach your audience via DV360, hopefully this slide answers some of that question, Mary.
It does. Thank you so much. I really want to kind of dive into that YouTube specific piece that you were just referencing and kind of that differentiator. So since YouTube viewing, you mentioned, is surging, and YouTube TV and YouTube is a big piece of that, definitely want to kind of dive into that next. And we'll discuss some misconceptions and where YouTube and YouTube TV really sit into the space, as well as more of the inventory that's really cool that sits within that. I think this is really helpful during kind of the Q4 timing, since that starts next week. And there's likely to be a spike in CTV viewership with kind of more time off, more holiday season, more families gathering. So it's important to capitalize on those. So looking at another one of our myths, specifically in the YouTube space, is YouTube is not really TV, when in reality, we view YouTube as the new TV, really. So Kamau, kind of what makes us think that?
No, that's a great question, Mary. And when you take a look at YouTube, like for me, the way I take a look at YouTube, I call it the media mecca of the world right now, right? And I will say, maybe YouTube has always been there, but during COVID and post-COVID, YouTube, the acceleration has been phenomenal. And you know what? And we haven't taken our foot off the gas, and we don't intend to, right? And so when you take a look at across the board, right, for the past 2 years, YouTube has been ranked #1 in CTV reach, which is a phenomenal feat. And honestly, for the past 2 years, and I expect that to be probably for the next year or so plus as well. And also, when you take a look at it from a YouTube audience's perspective, they aren't found on Netflix, Prime Video, or either Hulu, because our audiences are so specific to us. And the most important part about YouTube, when you take a look at the entire ecosystem, at the end of the day, we almost 5x your ROAS, right, compared to other platforms. And that's what we talk about reach. As Tony talked about, 98% reach there across the board, and we'll get to that a little bit more with DV360. And then the most important component of it is conversions. Monthly, we're averaging about 50 million conversions on YouTube TV, and that's across the board. When you take a look at our growth, our scalability, the influence, and the most important factor is, again, it's the media mecca. And so you can go to the next slide. And the reason, one of the areas why I think this has been so compelling is we now have significant content on live sports, whether it's the NBA playoffs, whether it's the NFL, and most recently we had it with Brazil. We had, I think, 19.4 million views across the board. It's been phenomenal. And the thing about that is, it's not just about the game, right? It's also about the highlights. You have the post-game debriefing, right? And then when you take a look at making sure your brands have that intimate feel doing this live sports content, that's the overall compelling piece to it, right? And then the most important factor is, you take a look at it, our partnerships with NBC Universal and Disney has been so pivotal for our growth around our live events and CTV. And it's not just about the sports, whether it's, the Grammys or whatever it is, we have all of that content. So when we have it, you have it. And then when you have it, you're able to scale, increase your reach, improve your efficiency, and at the end of the day, make money. And so I think when you take a look at our overall increased engagement, that's where I think our higher transactional value is really landing really well from a YouTube perspective. And I think you can go on to the next slide.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree with you, Kamau. So with kind of YouTube and YouTube TV at the center of customer attention, the next question to me is kind of, how do you activate and leverage this inventory effectively? I think that's really where DV360 comes in. You kind of want to lay a land here of TV can encompass much of your Q4 strategies and desirable inventory that you have for CTV. As a spoiler alert, and what kind of Kamau and Tony have mentioned, haven't seen it necessarily on a slide, but Tony kind of anecdotally referenced that DV360 has 98% reach in the CTV space, which can be responsible for 18% of operational cost savings. And CTV does have that cross-device conversion tracking for kind of that measurement question earlier. So before I get ahead of myself, I want to kind of dive into the next myth, which is, next slide, please. DV360 is biased towards Google inventory limiting my reach, when in reality, DV360 is much more expansive than many really give it credit for, I'd say, and it encompasses a fuller picture of reach and inventory than people give it credit for. So, Kamau, what do you have to say about that?
No, that's a great segue. I think to Tony's point earlier, 98% reach is phenomenal, right? And I take a look at DV360. It's like the quintessential buying door to the internet, right? And all this premium content. And the number one question a lot of times we get from folks who aren't as familiar with DV is, hey, why DV, right? And so what I will say first and foremost is some of the value we just walked you through from YouTube, you can only get YouTube by coming through DV360, right? And that was just some of the significant value that we walked you through. We also have exponential value as well. We're happy to follow up on post this call, but in order for you to access YouTube and all its benefits and its reach and awareness, you can access that coming through DV360 because we're the only platform that allows that, right? And then in addition to that, you take a look at the other publishers, that helps to expand our 98% reach, whether it's Hulu, whether it's Disney, whether it's Netflix, Peacock. And again, if it's out there, we have access to it, right? And that's the sweet spot. And then the other thing I will probably tell you too is one of the more key components and key benefits to DV360 is that when you have the media unification, right? Media unification meaning you have DV360 running and managing your YouTube. In addition to that, instead of you having your teams go out and manage your direct buys with those specific publishers, you bring all of those direct buys over to DV360, and we can manage that from a whole media unification perspective for you, right? And then what that will do is, one, increase your reach, as we talked about 98% reach. The other component, it will improve your efficiency, right, across the board. And then what I'm going to get into a little bit later is how we can also offer YouTube credits back to you from a media unification perspective, what we call a VIP, Video Incentive Program. And this was going to speak to money you're already spending, but we'll be able to give you that money back in a particular percentage for YouTube credits, right? And so net, when you take a look at it, the media unification component of it is phenomenal when you take a look at the breadth and the benefit of DV360. And in addition to that, you'll also have your own DV360 sales team, and you'll have your own DV360 analytics team. And within those components, we can also curate certain particular packages, whether it's a CTV Premier package for you, or you're looking at non-premium packages that we can also offer, and we can curate and pretty much customize specific to your OKRs. And so when we take a look at a lot of our premium inventory partnerships, some of the ones we just mentioned, listen, continued transparency, we were probably in the low 90s at one point, but with our strong partnership with Netflix, we've been able to increase that to 98% reach, and that's where we stand. And then the live TV sports we talked about earlier, whether it's football, basketball, we have F1, we have the soccer tournament coming up, beginning in June next year. Whatever it is on YouTube Sports, we have the content readily available for you. And even in Tubi, right, we have a lot of direct integrations there with Tubi. But across the board, when you take a look at the Google audiences, how we can curate that based off your OKRs, we can customize those specific packages. There's such a plethora of benefits that DV360 can offer you. And we're looking forward to walking you through those even more. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. And here's where we talk about those specific audiences. Here we have our retail media network. And within our retail media network, you have an abundance of tentacles towards specific audiences that you could be looking for to be targeted towards your brands, right? And whether it's Costco, whether it's Regal, whether it's even with Criteo, we have a strong partnership with Criteo where we have a plethora of opportunities for you to come through, and I specifically identify what audiences you're looking for, and we can make sure we match those audiences up to meet your OKRs relative to your campaigns, helping you to increase your reach and brand awareness, which will in turn come into making more money. And that's the net overall takeaway, all right? But I do want to make sure we talk about, and you understand the retail media network, because that's fairly new for us. And that was at one point, one of the areas that we had a small dent in, but now that we've sort of fixed that within our whole DV360 portfolio, we're ready, we're taking off now. And we've been able to offer that to a significant number of clients most recently. And I know, Tony, you wanted to talk also about some of the
yes,
content as well.
I'd love to talk on that last. A bit of an echo. One of the things we're saying right now is that as we come into the season, it's just so critically important that you're setting up your campaigns in the right way, with the right ambition, with the right creative, with the right budget splits. And so one of the recommendations we make is that you should have what we would call a full funnel asset library. So what does that mean? That means you have brand creative that can really start to get people excited about your business. You have product and performance creative that really is about driving conversions that start to appear using this retail media network targeting we're talking about, so you can track all of that. And also, let's also be conscious that Christmas is probably the last time period. You've got the whole Cyber 5 running into that. And so what we're saying now is that set up your campaigns appropriately with the right budgets, and let's make sure we're creating enough demand in the run up, leading up into Thanksgiving and Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all of that, and then crescendoing obviously as you get into the peak of the holiday season. But let's also make sure that we've got all of the right assets in the machine. DV360 is amazing at taking those assets and making sure they're running all of the right places. So display assets, video assets in all those shapes, sizes, durations, etc. So we can give you guidance on all of that, but let's make sure we're fully prepared for the season.
Absolutely. And next, kind of want to dive into the peak points as it kind of relates to kind of the customer journey. So Kamau, what do you have to say about those?
No, this is great. I think one of the areas here I really want to highlight is the evolving of our AI component within Gemini, right? Because within Gemini now we have peak points, which is a new product for us within our Google AI. And within our peak points, it allows us to identify the most meaningful peak moments within that YouTube's popular content, right? And that's where a lot of brands can start placing their specific audiences so you can get that level of intimate engagement, right, during those peak moments in YouTube content. And I think that's the area where we want to make sure we slow down and realize this will constantly be evolving, right? Because as AI is growing, it's maturing, and within that level of maturation, we have continuous new products coming down the pike, and this is just one of them. This is one of many, right? And so within those peak moments, it's also important too to make sure you understand the level of impressions, right, that can help to increase your click-through rate. And I think all of that encompasses a lot of the value and benefits that YouTube can offer running through DV360, right? And I think when you take a look at the targeting moments specific to the ad windows, right, your brand awareness, you take a look at your intimate engagement with the consumers, those are the areas where we really want to make sure we maximize across the board. And in that maximizing that, we also want to make sure we have the right content, to Tony's point earlier, right, the right video assets across the board, and we also want to make sure it's the right moment for the peak times. So if that's something that interests you, let's make sure we hop on that as soon as possible. I think it's a very, very key moment across the board for us.
I completely agree, and I know a lot of clients get excited, as do we at Adswerve, whenever there's new kind of platform features to test out and add to our platform. So thank you for featuring that. And speaking of platform features, the smarter inventory discovery and kind of the marketplace, what's going on there?
No, sure. This is what we talk about with some of the points that I mentioned earlier regarding making sure we can customize the inventory for you. And so whether it's within marketplace is a area within DV360, and once you go inside marketplace, you'll be able to actually tell the system what inventory you're looking for, and it will be able to provide certain specific recommendations based off what you're looking for. And that's the sweet spot. You talk about operational efficiency, right, and reducing hours. You feed this into the system, and the system will create and suggest options, including a lot of pre-negotiated deals as well. So whether that's around premium CTV packages or non-premium packages, at the end of the day, we can create that for you, customize that for you, and then make sure we can create a winning sort of playbook to ensure that when you go out, you're winning across the board, reaching awareness, improving efficiency, and making money with your conversions. But this is just, again, one of many areas where I think our AI is starting to improve and maturate itself across the board in regards to that level of improvement. Now, here's the VIP deal. Now, this is what I will call your Google loyalty card, okay? VIP stands for your video incentive plan, right? And then I'm gonna make this as simplistic as possible. When you're running and you're spending dollars on YouTube and you're running that through DV360, because that's the only platform that can access that for you, and you bring over your third-party publisher spend, when you combine that spend, all of that goes towards your video spend. What our VIP deal says is, listen, we appreciate your partnership, we appreciate your collaboration, and we appreciate your decision to work with us to help scale your business. And in doing so, Google will give you a percentage back on your YouTube credits. So for an example, if you spend and this is a realistic example. Say someone spent $5 million of YouTube money, and then they decided to, based off all the DV360's benefits, out of that 5 million of YouTube spend, there was another 15 million on third-party spend, and they wanted to unify their media. So they brought that 15 million over, plus the 5 million of YouTube, and that's a $20 million spend. And what Google says is, we'll give you credits, YouTube credits back toward that. So we're essentially giving you money back to you based off your spend, and going back within YouTube where you can scale your business, increase your reach, improve your efficiency across the board, and take advantage of a lot of those YouTube benefits we talked about earlier. But the most simplistic way to tell you is, you're getting money back or credits back on money you're already spending. And that's the sweet spot to remember. You're getting money back on money you're already spending. And yes, there are a couple of thresholds for that we can talk about later. And thank you for a lot of those who probably in the audience who have already signed up for VIP deals. And granted, we love writing those checks and giving that money back to you within YouTube credits. And the last thing I would say regarding the VIP deal, don't leave money on the table. Please don't. If you're already spending money, bring that third party over, combine that with your YouTube spend, sign a VIP deal, and get money back. It's just as simplistic as it gets. And that VIP deal includes all your video, which is digital out of home, right? Audio, everything across the board, right? Demand gen, all of it. So do not leave money on the table. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. And that's just Kamau speaking, not a Google employee. That's just Kamau. All right. So don't do that. All right. And I'll stop right there, Mary, because I want to make sure we have enough time for Q&As.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, a question that came through is kind of like, for those that are new to VIP deals, is there any kind of like extra detail that you would provide to to those individuals? Tell them a little bit more about what the VIP deals are? I know you just gave a lot of details, but just wanted to give some room and kind of fill in anything extra.
No, that's a great question. What I will say is, we have particular thresholds right now, like in the low seven figures in regards to video spend, right? In regard to qualify for a VIP deal. However, we're looking at even being more flexible, possibly in 2026, right? So we should know what that looks like in the next, say, month and a half or so. But I will say, we're looking at being more flexible from our entry point, because the VIP deal is becoming so popular for a lot of those folks who sign it, because they want to get that money back because they're already spending it. And so that's the piece where we'll be ready to communicate that. And we can talk about it post this call and let you know where we currently are. And then we should hopefully hear some new thresholds in another, say, month or so, which will be more beneficial to everyone on this call.
Kamau, do you mind if I just jump in and add a little bit of?
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that additional thing to think about is that you get the credits, but you also get something we call strategic value adds. Okay, so this is essentially extra treatment, extra support when it comes to things like creative, measurement, and all of these other areas as well. So we can follow up and give you more information on those, as well as some of the thresholds and some of the other information Kamau you just talked about. But it's a pretty good package, and it comes with extra, like Kamau says, it's a bit like a loyalty program. And if a loyalty program, if you go into first class, you get a little bit more treatment, special treatment.
And another question on that front is it just open to new users of DV360 or also existing users?
No, great question. It's open to new and existing. And so for the existing, there may be a particular threshold to ensure that there's year-over-year growth, right? To ensure that, hey, they can sign or re-sign up for the program. And also for the newer users who wants to sign up for the program, there's a smaller entry fee as well, a smaller entry spend as well, to make sure they can qualify for it. However, that kind of goes back to speaking to the level of flexibility we're working on now, just to ensure the holistic approach, because I will say it's gotten extremely popular now. And we want to ensure that, to Tony's point earlier, for those who qualify for it, you get all of the sort of specific SVAs that come with it. Because there are quite a few sort of sweet benefits that you will receive once you sign up for a VIP deal.
Awesome. Thank you all for taking these questions on the fly. Another one is, whenever you all kind of look at the needed spend in a platform, are you looking at it on an annual basis or a monthly basis?
Oh, for the VIP deal, we're looking at it more so. It's on an annual basis, but that's a great question too. Here's the sweet thing about that, Mary. The sweet spot is we can also, based on particular tempo moments that client may have, they can front load or back load whatever that annual amount is. So let's say, for an example, we have some clients who they know they're going to spend pretty heavy in Q2 and Q3. They put the majority of the dollars that they've committed to in Q2 and Q3 to ensure they get all of the sort of YouTube credits back, right, that they're spending for. And so we can specifically customize which quarter where they want to spend the majority of the money in, just to ensure they get every dollar for dollar that they deserve.
That's so nice. There's like they'll really work with clients and customers to make sure they get the most value out of it, and it's not like a super rigid sort of situation. So that's awesome to hear. And I know we've had multiple clients that have opted into this program and have been able to take advantage of it and further kind of advance the value that they're able to get out of DV360. So thanks for kind of taking the extra time to chat through these deals. I think it's very important for clients to kind of understand, especially as we mentioned earlier, like in this economic climate, budgets are getting more difficult. Or you're having to make your budgets go further, kind of than where you may have in years past. So kind of knowing where Google is chipping in to say, hey, yeah, we'll help you kind of reinvest back and give you some extra incentives there. So thank you both for your time and your vast knowledge. We've covered a lot of content in the last 40 minutes, so kind of want to dive into some key takeaways before diving into the actual like Q&A portion. We covered some questions, but if you have others, please send them in. So kind of looking at the key takeaways, DV360 provides unmatched reach and control for CTV inventory, as noted, that 98%, far and above any other media platform out there in terms of the reach and the inventory. YouTube is the new TV, not just, might be the misconception that it's not even considered TV. It's actually really the new TV. DV360 provides access to a full library of publishers, even beyond Google. Common misconception is that since it's Google's DSP, it only leans into Google inventory. As we've covered, that's not the case. There's actually a full gamut of inventory, specifically in CTV, but even outside of CTV, and the ability to frequency cap kind of on top of that. And then tying into that, DV360 unlocks efficiency and ROI for clients of all sizes, not just those enterprise level clients. I would like to give kind of like a fifth key takeaway that really resonated with me. It's kind of at the very, very beginning of the call, whenever Tony was talking about kind of the generational shift of using CTV now. A lot of our clients are thinking through some Gen Z tactics, kind of thinking through how the evolution of media and is changing, and kind of the comment about how Gen Z didn't ever really grow up with the cord in the household, and so now CTV is everywhere, and that 12% that never even paid for it to begin with is huge and just going to grow over time. So with that, let us move into questions. So it can kind of be a free for all here, Kamau or Tony, whoever wants to take it. But what would you say like the role that AI generated creative is starting to play in CTV campaigns? And are there some best practices that y'all have discovered along the way for using some AI driven variations along the core assets? I know y'all were talking about creatives earlier, so not sure if this factors into it.
I can jump in here. Yeah, this is a fast-moving question and a fast-moving space. So you guys will remember earlier this year, we made a bunch of really big announcements at Google at I/O around a product we called Flow and then VO3. These are our video generation models, which are at the cutting edge. There is nothing better than these models out there. We are gradually starting to bring those into our ad platforms. They're not fully integrated yet. So what some of them are already in YouTube, some of them are in Google Ads, but we're increasingly equipping and bringing those into DV360. So that's the first thing. So, but the question is, what do we think about those? I think there's a massive role for those. And let's be very clear about it. So what we're saying here is that, remember, we have multiple video products on DV360. So we have brand video, and then we have demand gen. So demand gen really is your hard working performance driving video product that's going to get you your leads, is going to get you your online sales, is going to get you all of that. So you really have to have what we call promotional video, yeah, and product video. You need that video in there, and you can use our AI tools to create those different versions. You can change backgrounds, you can change characters, you can outpaint. We'll follow up and via Adswerve, and you can see some of the full breadth of what we're doing technologically with AI video. For if you want to adapt to creative to drive hardworking performance, or you want to create net new creative, everything's there. So we're completely open to that. There's a giant role for that, because going back to the point I made earlier that Mary referenced, you have to have a full library, and you can't commission a shoot for every single piece of video that you need, in the Bahamas, or maybe you can get away with that. But there's going to be a role for kind of handcrafted video and a role for AI video. All of them are necessary, as well as the display formats too.
Thank you for that, Tony. Another question that we have is how do you measure, and this could have a very nuanced answer, so we may need to follow up in an email, but how do you measure a campaign performance for retail and foot traffic? Have you all kind of encountered any client scenarios of how you typically have those conversations with clients?
Kamau, do you mind if I start first and I flip it to you, and then you can maybe do the double click on it? So I think the really important thing to remember about DV360 is that there is no shortage of measurement tools and technologies on DV360. And the way to think about it is to split them into two. So we have incrementality measurement tools and then reporting tools. I just made a key distinction. So incrementality tools are, for example, search lift. So we can look at the difference between those exposed to your ads and those not exposed, and look at the difference in their search behavior. Brand lift, do they have higher recall, etc. Yeah. We have something called conversion lift. Actually, did you get more conversions in the exposed area versus in the area that wasn't exposed? And you can do that from a geo point of view and from a user point of view. So that conversion lift product is really key. The other thing you can do is that you can construct experiments, A/B experiments. So experiments around bidding, creative, geo, and many others. And you can look at the difference between two different cells that you yourself can construct. Then I would say the other end area that we are in, so that was just incrementality, is what I call reporting tools. And so reporting tools are just like, did we deliver the campaign efficiently? Okay, so that's really important too, yeah? And so the power of being this platform that has 98% of CTV viewers is that we go to everybody. And so you want to be able to do things that deduplicate your reach, using our frequency management, yeah? And so you can look at different publishers and then see where you were covered and not covered. We have a reporting metric called XMR, cross media reports, that looks at overlap. That's also built into that too. So we have standard delivery reports, we have reach reports, and we have attribution path reports. And you can see what publishers, what mediums were in the journey before conversion happened. We pretty much, there's no shortage. And then if you then add in the retail media networks where you can then close the loop on that starts to get really fascinating. And that's, maybe Kamau can double click on that. But one of the other things I'd say is that a key part of this is your first party data. Your first party data has to be inside of DV360. So bring your customer data into DV360 through customer match, or even if you already have it in Google Ads, you can transfer it over. And then that moves you to a completely new level of reporting that starts to get even more sophisticated. Kamau, I don't know if you want to add anything to that in case I missed something.
No, listen, I'm not sure if I can double down on that one, but the only thing I would probably add, if anything, I think you may have mentioned this already, was like we have the sort of reach, right? Unique reach to kind of, measure how often someone sees the campaign, right? And that kind of speaks to also the frequency capping within DV360, right? We also have the average impression frequency per user. So we have a multitude of, so what I'll say, a plethora of measurement utilizations that we can make sure we offer you all. Because at the end of the day, it's also about the level of conversions, right? And so we also have whether it's floodlight, right? We have post-click conversions. So we have a number of sort of levers that we can utilize. And I think that's the most important factor, which is probably one of the better questions we've gotten so far. Because at the end of the day, it's always about measurement. Like, is it working relative to the OKRs that I've asked for? And then here are my OKRs. What's the measurable outcomes? And then where we're looking at how do we scale that? right? And so I think, Tony, you hit everything. You pretty much crushed it. But I do want to make sure we can always understand, like, there's what I would call like a toolkit of measurables that we can make sure we can offer within DV360.
And just to build on that comment, it is a complicated world, and that's why working with partners like Adswerve is so important, because we've got the tools. You have to come up with a system that works for you, and that's why we rely on you guys working with partners like Adswerve in order to be able to get to that too.
Happy to be here. Yeah, there's also, I'd say, the massive platform consideration of Campaign Manager 360, and kind of bringing in, there's a whole offline API that exists in that platform that kind of comes in through a floodlight and pairs really nicely with DV360, and also integrates with lots of kind of third-party measurement platforms that you may be already using or exploring right now for retail and foot traffic. So there's a lot of different options at your disposal, and kind of depends on where you're at and where your platforms already exist, and kind of the specific data sets that you do have access to. Another question that came in is, we're running CTV remarketing in DV360 with floodlight tracking and seeing amazing results. Awesome to hear it. Since performance drops after 30 days, we cap remarketing there. How many CTV video assets should we run at once?
Let me give this a shot. There isn't really a ceiling, but we do know there's a floor, if I can explain that. And so we're doing more and more analysis on this. And so the way to think about it is that if you're running CTV inventory and also you care about conversions, you clearly need assets, video assets that drive conversions. Yeah, so I call those kind of promotional and product assets. And those are very distinct, what we call story types. So that already that's a minimum of 2. Okay, and then that's before you start thinking about the sizes and the formats. So we definitely feel you should be running vertical video that opens up a whole shorts inventory to you and all the vertical video assets. And if you run that across each version, each story type, you're already talking about 4 minimum. If you have square, horizontal, you don't know where your user's going to turn up. It could be, I could be watching you on the big TV on my sofa, I could be on the phone, in transit, I could be anywhere. And so the remarketing, one of the challenges with remarketing, and why sometimes people hit the wall with remarketing, is that they don't have enough assets there, because your user could be turning up in all sorts of places, but if you don't have the vertical when they're on their phone, you're not going to reach them. So as I said, there isn't really a ceiling, although what you do want is to make sure those ads have enough frequency attached to them. So so I'd say the minimum you should have in any campaign is 5. Okay, and I'd make sure all story types are there. So you need something that really drives promotion, that's a strong call to action, buy now. You need something that explains the product, and then you need a brand asset too. And then you need those in all of the different sizes and formats.
I completely agree. Going back to the kind of offline sales type of campaign or goal, what is the best campaign type on DV360 to measure offline sales?
So the question was, what was the best? Say it again now.
Yes, sorry, I fumbled myself there. What is the best campaign type on DV360 to measure offline sales?
Do we mean campaign type as in demand gen versus VRC VVC? Is that the root? Is it measurement? Because if it's the type of campaign, obviously you want it to be, choose your MO, your media objective should be online sales. And if it's online sales, the best product we have for that is called demand gen.
Right.
They did clarify measurement primarily.
Okay. I think if I had to pick, and you push me in the corner, I would do depending on what kind of business you are, I'd probably do conversion lift. Kamau, I don't know if you agree with that, and then you could do geo or user.
I would say probably like more like a geo. A conversion lift would be great too, but also geo too. So at least that way they can take a look at it. You can run geos in 2 separate areas as well, right? You don't have to run it all in one particular component of it. And so you can do in different stages and also different locations, just to ensure which one might have the better sort of brand awareness or search lift, whatever your OKR is focusing on. And then wherever that lift is, that's where you really want to focus the majority of your campaigns on, right? And then we've done that several times, which is a great question. We've done that several times by running different geos in different areas across the board that way.
That answered it, so thank you. Okay, great. We've got about 6 minutes left. Got a couple questions as well. So additional ones coming in, but keep writing in if anything comes to mind. But from y'all's experience, how do you think that DV360 scale compares with other platforms like Trade Desk? I know we briefly kind of talked on it in one of the slides, but especially whenever it comes to balancing awareness and performance goals, how does DV kind of compare?
No, I think and I'll take this one, Tony. I think when you take a look at the level of comparison, first and foremost, I think what I would go back and focus on is, if you remember, there was a slide that talked about 2.6 billion in views, 3 billion in views, and 5.1 billion. And so from that perspective, first and foremost, what I like to say is, like, DV360 stands alone, right, from that level of impact. Okay. And then the other component of it is, I like to also focus on is the 98% reach, right? And that's one area where it's a huge differentiation, right, with that 98% reach in regards to scalability. And the other thing I would like to sort of harp on too is the frequency capping, right? That's where we can really show exponential value to ensure you're not wasting any of your media dollars, to having the same campaign seen by the same individuals, multiple times, versus having that frequency capping to ensure that certain people in your audience only see that campaign a particular time within that weekly basis, right? So I think that's where we really start to separate ourselves from some of our peers across the board that way. And I think the other component of it is just when you take a look at the beneficial aspect of the VIP deal, right? Because all of that is sort of baked into one in regards to differentiation. So I think those areas are some of the more key points that I would probably focus on in regards to which platform would I say is better versus the other.
Wasn't sure, Tony, if there's anything else you wanted to add, but I kind of have a secondary question that kind of factors into that. As clients are kind of moving into Q4 and really trying to make every dollar stretch, maybe building on what you just kind of mentioned, but what would be like the next immediate step that you would recommend for any client to really help them kind of maximize CTV going into Q4 next week?
Can I start there and I've knock it over to you? I'd say really have a really clear idea of your budget split over time and over audience. So I see it as a kind of a table. So let's run the next few weeks in the columns and then start to think about the crescendo of your budget. So we got Cyber 5, we got holiday, we got all of that. So we're really smart about thinking about the pacing of your dollars across time. The other thing is that be really clear about the marketing objective. Okay, so I feel right now to really capitalize on holiday and things like Black Friday and the rest of Cyber 5, you probably need to get your name out there. People need to know who you are, and you need to kind of build up your brand recall and your brand preference. And so I'll front load what I was doing around building my brand. So that means buying what we call VRC or VVC. There's a video views, so reach campaigns, and also view campaigns, and to front load all of that so people know who you are. That's also really good because it starts to build you a nice engaged user base. Okay, and think about that as another way of talking about a cookie, an addressable audience, that you can start to go back to. So somebody asked a question about remarketing. So you've got this engaged user base, and then you can start to crescendo your demand gen campaign. Remember, your demand gen campaign is one I talked about earlier on, which is one that drives online sales or drives some kind of action. It's a CPA-based video product. So imagine that. So you're front loading, building up awareness over time, the budget's there, and then demand gen starts to kick in over time, crescendoing and maybe dip after, Cyber Monday, and then you're back in and you're on a run up, to holiday. In addition to that, just make sure you have all the right assets so you can feed the machine everything they need during that time period, so you get your audience where your audience is, and then obviously make sure remarketing is running. And then even then, you got to separate your remarketing into prospect remarketing, so somebody who touched your website once or whatever, and then customer remarketing, so existing people that you've ingested into the system using your first-party data using customer match. And then you can use that to do things like optimize targeting or lookalikes, find people like those people or get those people again or suppress those people. You can do all sorts of stuff around all of that. So yeah, so that was what I would recommend.
And real quick, and I'll close it out with this. I think Tony hit the hammer on the nail. One of the areas too, I think the budgeting component of it, right? Understand what your budgeting situation is, right? And also have the level of flexibility around your budgeting, right? Because as we start to customize budgeting campaigns, that's important to make sure you understand, hey, do you have enough room? And you need to have that room, right? Based off your level of conversions and awareness that's coming through, right? The other component of it is too, that I think Tony mentioned this as well, is making sure you have the right assets, right? And getting your brand out there from an awareness perspective. And whether you have to understand what your OKRs are, right? Because that's extremely critical. And whether you're working from an internal team or whether you're working with a strong partner like Adswerve to help you sort of create that playbook, at the end of the day, those things are so critical to ensure everything Tony walked you through is so vital, in addition to making sure how much money you can spend across the board. And I know we're right at time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw the timer running out right as you finished that thought. That's awesome. So with that, we'll just kind of wrap it up, bring us to the end of today's webinar. I'd like to thank our presenters, Kamau and Tony, for sharing all of your great insights. Truly fantastic. Thank you all for attending. We're always kind of adding new blog posts, ebooks, tip sheets, and more to our website. And if you have access to Adswerve Connect, always feel free to reach out with any questions. And we'll be sending that follow-up email with the recording of today's session no later than tomorrow. Please let us know if we can help you out with any marketing challenge. If we didn't get to your question, we'll be following up in that email. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.